We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
with global pals. It's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast, the podcast where we talk about
Everything Theater. Hi, everybody. I'm Benita Zahn.
And I'm Ellen Cribbs. Lovely to see you today.
Back at you. Ellen and I spent this past weekend seeing a lot of each other because we just did a very short run of Love, Loss, and What I Wore.
Beautifully directed by Benita.
It was great fun. We had a wonderful cast. And I have one thing, and I posted about it, is I've been trying for 3 years to do that show. You know, the pandemic got in the way and things like that. Persistence. And I think that's an important, and I have a feeling it's going to come up in our interview segment that we begin, that patience is one thing. But in theater, one needs persistence. So without further ado, let's introduce our guests. We have actor extraordinaire and playwright Leigh Strimbeck joining us. Hi, Leigh.
Hello, everybody.
And Leigh is just off a wonderful run as Amanda Wingfield in Glass Menagerie at the Bridge Street Theater. And also with us is Judy Braha, and she is a director and is directing a play that Leigh wrote called Dog People. So, and it's a world premiere.
Yes.
And it will be taking place at the Great Barrington Public, is it the Great Barrington Public Theater is where it will be? And it's in
It'll be in the Daniel Arts Center on the campus of Bard College at Simon's Rock.
Gotcha.
So
one thing, I'm looking through the stuff and couldn't find that in the release because you're part of the Great Barrington.
Well, so Great Barrington Public Theater is producing it. But there are theaters that, like Wham, choose not to get a building because back in the day, they used to call it the edifice complex, where people would get obsessed with getting a building, and then you spend all this time, fundraising for the building, as opposed to, no, this is the right space for this work. This is the right space for this work. This is what we can afford this year, this season, an expansion. So they work generally between Great Barrington Public Theater, between St. James in Great Barrington, which is this beautiful, beautiful building and space, and then performances at the Daniel Arts Center.
And just should point out you're a founding member of Wham Theater.
Yes, yes.
Good, got all that stuff out of the way. Leigh, talk to us, and Judy, jump right in a little bit about the play. It's built as a story of devotion, recovery, and second chances. So who's saving who? How much is this about your life? Just here's the stew. Have at it.
Well, first, I should say I wouldn't have written it if I didn't join the writers group that Great Barrington Public Theater is the umbrella for, which is called Berkshire Voices. I've always written, and I've written plays that were commissioned by towns and history plays that were commissioned and lots of devised work, which is a kind of writing. But I started to write plays that were just came out of my head. And I think I wrote 3 with Berkshire Voices. One of them was my one-woman show about Isabella Stewart Gardner. And then I kind of felt that I had dried up a little bit. And so a friend in the writing group gave me a prompt because he said, do you want a prompt? And I said, yeah, sure. I joined a memoir group because I was starting to write memoir. I think I have to write. And the prompt he gave me was 2 people who haven't seen each other in a long time meet in a park. And if you say park, I say dog. So So there had to be dogs involved. And that sent me off to the races. And how much is it about me? I don't think you can write without writing about something's going to be about you. Like every playwright has their family play. Um, and in some ways, I think you just write your family and your experiences over and over again. So there's a lot of me in this play, and there's a lot of
Your dog in this play.
dogs that I have known and loved. My dog has a very healthy social life, and every morning I walk with a great big group of friends, and our dogs walk off leash together. And my family are dog people. There was this article that came out recently that, and it said in it, "What is your attachment style?" My attachment style is canine. So, so that's kind of what and because of the pandemic, I was thinking a lot about how much dogs got a lot of us through, and how meaningful our relationships became with cats and dogs and pets when we couldn't go out and we couldn't talk to people. And in the case of my dog walking group, we met every morning and we got each other through. And I'd come home and sometimes that was it for the day. I mean, I'd see my husband, but he was working, and you couldn't see other people. You couldn't go anywhere. So this play, those are some of the things that this play came out of.
Persistence.
Persistence, yeah. We've also talked a lot about, in the context of people and their dogs, the unconditional love that we have for our dogs, and sometimes the conditional love we have for our people, and how those two things interface with one another. So at the heart of this play, there are two people who have been in a relationship together but have split up about a year ago, and they each have a dog, and they meet in the park, and they don't know what's going to happen. And Elise talked to me a lot about this kind of epidemic of the loneliness that seems to be very pervasive in the world right now, and very fractious, polarized relationships between people, and how those get negotiated. And a lot of times our dogs help us negotiate.
Were you sold on this play? How did you come to, we know this is Leigh's baby. How did you come to be part of this?
I come to be part of this. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of Great Barrington Public Theater, and I'm particularly involved. I love to be involved with Berkshire Voices, the playwriting group that Leigh's a part of. And I've been doing some programming and collaborative play development with them as the last year or so has gone by. And we decided at the theater company, after a long time not being able to financially do this, we decided we really wanted to produce a play that came out of Berkshire Voices, that grew up in Berkshire Voices. And so we read a lot of different plays that were submitted by, how many playwrights? Maybe like 20 something playwrights that belong to Voices.
I would say
and so a bunch of playwrights submitted full-length plays to us to kind of read through and decide what would be a good fit for our season. And Dog People really leapt out as a really great thing to do at this particular time. It's very funny, but it's also very heartfelt. And I think those two things, I hope will be a wonderful evening in the theater. It's sort of a crazy theatrical romp that, as Leigh likes to say, couldn't happen on film and couldn't happen anywhere except in a theater. So that really attracted me. And I'm also a dog person. I have 2 dogs, and yes, they got me through the pandemic, and I saw lots of people I never would have seen if I hadn't been walking my dogs during the pandemic. So all of those things, I think together added up to really wanting to work on this play with Leigh. And here we are.
So you were sold right out of the gate?
Me? I was sold right out of the gate. Well, I would say we had 3 plays that we really loved out of the group, and we had to look at the whole season and figure out, okay, if we're doing the Rubik's Cube of this season, what is the what is the play that seems to be a good complement to the other plays we had decided to do. So I was sold out of the gate, but I wasn't the only person making the decision.
And
And also,
logistically, oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead, Leigh.
well, also, when Judy and Jim talked to me, they asked if I would be willing to rewrite during rehearsals. And I was more than willing to do that because we have two wonderful actors, Chris Tucci and Sheila B. from Shake and Co. And, you know, with Judy and Chris and Sheila all in the room, such smart theater people, the play has become so much stronger in the past 2 weeks. I mean, I really have torn apart entire scenes and I cut 10 pages off the original reading the first day we read it in rehearsal. And that's been a really great learning curve for me, to this particular process, because usually you get actors and they read it from the script, or, you know, God forbid you're reading it on Zoom, which is really a hard way to learn as a playwright. But when you get to day after day and really have time to talk about it, it's just been a great experience. And I think it's a much better play for the rewriting process. We just froze the script. We froze it days later than we originally said, but the script is now frozen.
I should also say that we didn't just want to do this play, we wanted to develop the play.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh yeah, here we go, let's throw it up there. It was really about, okay, we are going to use this 3 weeks of rehearsal as both development and rehearsal process. And how can the collaborative minds in the room really work together to help Leigh grow the script, and then everybody help each other grow into the performance that people are going to see when they come to see the play at the theater.
Could you speak a little bit more about that collaboration with the director, playwright, actors? You know, who kind of does take the reins if there is one particular person, or is it really kind of a sense of, you know, should we talk about this? You know, is this scene working? Tell us how you all found that collaboration to work.
Judy's taking the reins. There's no question about it.
Yeah, that's my job. That's my job, to take the reins.
Yeah.
That's what directors do, particularly in growing new work, in new work development processes. It's not a tyrannical taking of the reins. It's asking a lot of questions, and doing a bunch of experiments, and trying things one way and then another. And I think we've learned so much in the past 2 weeks. And Leigh has been in the room with us for most of that time, and really also asking her questions and positing ideas, and the actors have been positing their ideas. And I guess I'm sort of the coordinator of all of that.
And do you have a preference, Judy, of working on a new work where there is all that extra kind of work, or is the stress of it, is it easier just to do a previously produced play?
Not always. I prefer to do new work. I like the developmental process, and I really like to sort of delve deep with playwrights into, you know, what was their intention, what do they hope for with this play, what isn't getting across, what is getting across, how can it be more? If you know, if we enter into this together, what, you know, if I get an inkling, or she gets an inkling, or an actor gets an inkling, we just want to put it on the table and explore it. So I love doing already written plays as well. I think right at this point in my life, I like focusing on new work.
I wonder how you, in a way, steel yourself and also keep your mind and ears openly when there's a table reading and beforehand, and then with the actors who then have input. And, you know, that's your baby. And sometimes they say, this part of the baby's a little ugly. Give us a sense of how you manage that.
Well, I am a person who's taken a very long time to grow up. and I think I'm grown up. And so I I I knew I wasn't worried about this team, but I have to say this team of people in particular has been one of the better rehearsal rooms I've ever been in. Um, so I know that when somebody says something that, like I think in the first couple of days, everybody was talking about that with this, there's this place where the play just it plateaus. And I didn't love that, but I knew it. I heard it too. So I was like, oh, that if three people are all seeing it, then, the grown-up thing to do is to deal with it as opposed to get hurt about it. And there are some notes that, the first thing I do is go, oh my goodness, I feel so defensive. And then the next thing is, yes, but is that a good idea? And the ideas that have come towards me, 90% of them have been really helpful and really fantastic. And I'm not yet a playwright. I told Judy at one point, like, my dream would be to be the kind of playwright who's like, I have written these words, you say them, I know I'm right. From the first page to the last, I am absolutely correct. And I'm not that, right? I think actors start moving and they start talking, and it's so clear when you haven't put the words in the right way, or when a monologue that you love has gone on too long. So I deal with it by trying to be a grown-up and giving myself some good talkings to. Because of course, the sensitive part of you wants to go like, no. You know what I mean? But that's not going to make a better play. And I, as Judy said, I really try to write things that can't be on film. So I have a play that has a ghost that turns into a tree, and I have another play that's about an art theft that's complicated, and I don't want to write stuff that can be a television show. It's got to be something that only actors can do, only actors on a stage, because I feel like we are magic people when we have the chance. And when people get together in a room and they're all breathing together, it's almost, to me, that's almost sacred. I mean, I really feel very, like, even if you can get people laughing together once, especially now in our culture, that's sacred. So I wanted to write something also lighter and funnier, because there's a lot of really heavy work out there, and rightly so. So I wrote something lighter and funnier, but I have my themes in there, don't I, Judy?
Yes. Leigh turned to me the other day. I was like, this is a really heavy thing that we're doing here, like a heavy lift.
It's a heavy lift because of what the actors have to do. But I also wrote it as, true confessions. My dog has somebody was coming to the park a couple years ago who had a golden doodle. And one of the characters in the play is a golden doodle. And this was an untrained dog with owners who were not, most owners, you sort of work it out. You're like, oh, I guess our dogs don't get along, and I'll walk over here, and all that. This was not happening with this owner. They were non-communicative, and the dog was not well trained. And so it's kind of a revenge play too against this golden doodle. We talk about petty, and the whole issue of doodles in our culture, which the doodles exploded during the pandemic, and people were paying $3,000 a puppy. And I've only ever had mutts, except for one dog when my kids were small, and we had some biting issues, and I had to get a dog and train a reliable Labrador. So there's the theme of, even that is kind of a theme about capitalism, and, who gets to buy their dogs and who gets to find their dogs, and how we view dogs that aren't purebreds, and how people get attached to fancy cars and fancy dogs. I mean, it's not overt, but it's in there.
Do you have real dogs on stage? Or they just referenced?
They are embodied.
They are embodied by actors. So there's 4 characters and there's 2 actors.
Oh.
Yes. And these actors, I said, was watching them today. I'm like, you know what? We should just take the play to Canyon Ranch and tell people, like, you know, have people pay you and they do the play all weekend. They will burn thousands of calories. It's
Love it.
perfect Canyon Ranch spa date.
Right.
That's
It's-
that's part of what I meant by a heavy lift. I mean, these actors are working, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I just thought it would be super cool. But they are these actors are working.
Two
Well, they always say
handers are a
that.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. They always say, like, don't work with babies and animals, right? Like,
Yeah.
have either of you ever had a live animal on stage? And are there any stories about that?
I played Annie Sullivan in The Miracle Worker in high school, and my family had a basset hound, a very big. But he was a blue ribbon basset hound that had been given away when his show days were over to my family. And somebody, the director, thought it would be great that the family, the Sullivan family, had a dog. So I had to do the Annie Sullivan monologue, this very beautiful, serious monologue about it's not the water monologue, but it's something very, you know, tender like that. And there was this little tea table, and the basset hound was on stage with me. He was supposed to sit there, but there were some crumbs upstage, and he went underneath the tea table, and it got caught on his back. He was not for nothing. He was unneutered, so He's moving slowly upstage with his ass to the audience, his giant basset tail wagging with a table on his back. And all he's trying to do is get to the crumbs. And I was such a young actor. I just held onto the leash and like did their dramatic monologue. God. So that's my that's my animal story. And no, I've never been on stage with a live animal since.
A couple of actors perhaps are animals, but that's a story
Yeah,
for another
different
day.
story. Yeah, they have a little more self-control when it comes to crumbs on the stage. A little more self-control.
Little tiny bit more.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask also about Chat GPT. You know, as a playwright, does that worry you, Lee? And then the follow-up really goes to then Judy, you know, how do you begin to work with playwrights in that environment?
I mean, first of all, it wouldn't even occur to me to try to do anything with Chat GPT because my whole interest in writing is my writing, is the way I think, the way I want to tell a story, the way I want to put words together. So it wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I've read of play scripts that have come out of Chat GPT have been on Facebook and stuff, and they seem absolutely absurd to me. So for me, it's neither here nor there. I mean, the AI use of actors' voices and all that is a much greater concern, I think. But as long as I can write, I wouldn't outsource it in any way. I mean, the grind is part of you know, now that I finally have time to really write, that the grind is part of the joy. So
Yeah, and I really have no interest in I want to work with living people. That's why I'm in the theater, because I love getting in a room with living people and exchanging ideas and making stories live. That to me doesn't have anything to do with a computer or a computer entity. And I mean, if it's a piece about a bot, then I guess maybe that could, but really, no, I'm not up for it.
me neither. Yeah.
I was curious to go back to something you were talking about, Lee, of because we've mentioned this a couple times recently on the podcast, of saying there's a lot of drama out there and you wanted to do something that was a little lighter fare, a little more comedic. Do you feel that post-COVID, that's still kind of the dynamic that people are feeling of, we need this levity, we need a good laugh, you know, because we had such a rough time when everything was shut down and we were, you know, stripped away from the arts. Do you think that's part of it, or do you think, I don't know, that we're going back to normal programming?
I think that all over the arts in America, we are once again, and this has happened before and it's happening again. There's a push for equity and a push for the stories that haven't been told, the stories that have been essentially been oppressed. And that the people who tell them should be the people whose stories they are. So I think the theater is big enough to hold all of it.
Mhm.
And I love all of it, you know, and I, you know, in terms of like Black theater, I've seen Pearly Victorious. I've seen 2 productions of Top Dog, Underdog. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm going to see, not to mention Appropriate. Oh my God. So, you know, I'm all for widening the tent and also blowing things up a little bit. That means though, if I'm going to write, I need to write, you know, that was part of the thing with Dog People is I had to write what I know. And if there's one thing I know, it's dogs and fucked up relationships. Those are 2 things I know.
I was gonna say, that's the elevator sales pitch for the show. There you go.
There you
There you
go.
go.
Now, if you could expand a little bit, and you've already got a sold out show. I mean, you guys are running from the 31st of May through the 16th of June. And last check, one's already, as I said, sold out.
Really?
Yep,
Wow.
exactly.
Yeah.
What are we gonna see? And these 2 people playing 4 characters, 2 of the characters have 4 legs.
What do you mean? What are you going to see?
Give us just a little more about the show.
Okay.
The
It's always
story.
hard for me to do that because I want people to be surprised.
Well,
And
I get that, but just, you know, a little more, just a little more than 2 people and who's saving whom? The rescue dogs or the dogs saving the people or the people saving the dogs? Great. Can you give us the next sentence?
Judy, you got to help me out here.
Yeah, I think the next sentence has to do with how people and dogs learn to negotiate carefully, slowly, find a way to talk to each other in a world where people are not being good at talking to each other. And the miracle might be that they're making some headway and they might find a way forward. But we don't know that for sure. We find this in this play with both the dogs and the people. We don't know what's going to happen with them. It's fraught. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of baggage. There's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of innocence. So what we're watching when we're watching the play is like a feeling through some given circumstances to see if happiness might be possible.
And forgiveness and as Judy said in the very beginning, the way we speak to and love our dogs and the way we speak to and try to love each other.
We sometimes get cameos on the show from Benita's dog, Stanley. I'm thinking about Stanley right now.
Don't see him right now. But what Leigh said is, I'm convinced Stanley has a better social life than I do.
Yeah. Oh, I know Sweet has, my dog is, his name's Sweet.
Yeah.
And I know he's got a better social life than most people. He's dating 2 people right now. He's dating Rufus and Lulu. and they're in this throuple. And it's really beautiful, except that Lulu had a sleepover at Toby's house, and now Lulu seems very into Toby. So the throuple's a little bit threatened at the moment.
Yeah, Natasha got a little, you know, the owners put up a barrier so she couldn't see Stanley because she was digging in their yard. I'm like, really? She's a dog. So then, you know, Natasha's gotten a little fickle. She's a husky. You know how they are.
Yeah. Big personalities.
Yeah, but so now it's I think Hazel has Stanley's heart. Hazel is a miniature chocolate poodle. And this all sounds nuts if you don't have dogs.
Yeah.
But I understand how the dog, and if you do, more so than cats, because you tend not to go out and walk with your animal.
Yeah.
But my sense, Lee, is that we begin to, I think I'm hearing from you and being a dog person is we begin to see the world a bit as the dog does, and we see relationships um, ebb and flow and come out of nowhere sometimes. And why the dog ignores another dog,
Yeah.
they don't even know what they say to each other.
Yeah, and there's also one of the things I love about walking dogs is they're so in the moment. And when I was writing the dog characters, that was one of the things I struggled with because, you know, I'm not hugely sentimental. I don't have birthday parties for my dog. I don't give my dogs Christmas gifts. I'm just not that kind of dog owner. But you do wonder what their memory is and what they think about, what they reflect on. And then the beauty is that, I used to have this joke with my husband. I'd come back from walking the dog and he'd say, "How was the walk?" And I'd say, "It was the best walk ever. Every single day was the best walk ever. It doesn't matter if it's raining, if it's free, it doesn't matter." And the dog is always kind of checking with you. They'll see something and go like, "Did you see that?" I mean, they're just so, and that teaches us to do that too. And that's one of the things I love about them.
There's a sense, it sounds to me like in a way there's an acting lesson.
Oh my gosh, the number of times when I was teaching acting that I wanted to bring my dog into the studio and say to the students, just watch the dog take in the room. Because actors are always, we act coming into a room. I'm in the room, but we don't come in the room like, well, yeah, what's happening in this room? What's happening in that corner? How are you? What's happening? They take in the room like dogs, but still they're so present. So
Stella
yeah,
Adler actually talks about this in Respect for Acting. She refers to the cat. She's like, if you watch a cat walk on stage, everyone's going to watch that cat because that cat is just being a cat. It's like, don't get upstaged by a cat.
Lee has
Just
really
gotta be it.
Lee has really done a great job capturing the voices of these dogs. And they're very different from one another, and they have a very particular way of expressing themselves. We have a golden doodle and a pit bull mix, so they have different ways of seeing the world, and she's really captured that in such an amazing way in the language she's given them.
and the world has a different way of seeing them, which has in turn shaped them because of the way they're perceived by other people.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what we do with humans too. I think there's a natural, we categorize people very quickly. I think it's like a safety thing we do. And then sometimes you find out you were completely wrong, that you put somebody in this box and then you start to get to know them and you're like, oh, I had them in the wrong box entirely. And we do it so much with, I call it breedism, but I think we do it with breeds too. And did you know my dog is almost all black? And did you know black dogs are one of the least popular dogs, all black dogs?
My Stanley, he
Yeah,
was in a shelter for a very long time. People will
yeah.
not adopt them.
They won't adopt them. They're difficult to photograph. And I mean, I joke with my friends at the park that my dog is considered suspicious just because he's an all black dog, which is a terrible sounding joke, but people do treat him differently than a fluffy, pretty, boundy little doodle. Like he gets a different treatment. So
Yeah,
I'm not happy about that.
no. And when you tell people that,
Yeah,
uh,
I know.
that's
Well,
something else for us to confront.
and the other thing that this play has a lot of is training methods and different opinions about training methods. And right now, this country is like, I mean, there are opinions about training that I have never before heard in my life. Like you have to ask a dog for consent before you touch it. That's, like that's one extreme. And then there's the old training that many of us grew up with way back in the day where my parents hit dogs with a rolled up newspaper on the nose. That's the old school way of bringing up dogs. So how you train a dog, how much you should train a dog, and all of that is also in the play as a reflection of our personalities.
Life lessons.
Mhm.
So where does it go from here, Lee?
I don't know.
Judy,
You're
where
not
could it
determined.
go from here?
Where would I like it to go?
Yeah.
I'd like it to go all over the place. I mean, I think it's, it's a it's a two-actor play with four characters that when we did the first reading of it at the Foundry in West Stockbridge, I think when Jim Frangione asked how many people in the audience were dog owners, I mean, well over 50% of the people raised their hands. So I think it's something that a lot of audience members could relate to and delight in, all over the country. I mean, this is a major, this is a dog, we're in dog country, and of course a lot of other countries too. So I would love it if the script got handed around after this and it got other productions. And I'll probably, have another go at the script. Well, I'm doing it already. I just can't do it with the actors because we broke their brains.
At some point, that's it. You
I mean, I know that as an actor, I know that there's a point where you can't take in anymore. So I love the version. I love where we got to. I'll probably sculpt it more, and then I guess I'll send it out. That's I'm not great at submitting, but
So Judy, you're gonna have to give her a poke. So it's May 31st through June 16th at the Leibowitz Theater at Simon's Rock.
Yes.
And one's already sold out, so tarry not. Don't stop and sniff the hydrant. Book your tickets.
Amen to that.
Thank
Judy
you.
Braha, the director, Leigh Strimbeck, the playwright in this case. It's great seeing you, great to meet you. And Ellen is a dog person too. We get, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Well, we'll see you at
Keeping it private.
And
Thank you
all
so
our
much for
listeners out
having us.
there, whether you're, dog, cat, fish, whatever person you are, it's been lovely chatting. We'll catch you next time. I'm Ellen Cripps.
And I've been Anita Zahn. Be well.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything, everything.